Hey, it's Talking Drupal time. It is Wednesday, March 25th, 2015, and it's episode 91. And today we're talking about international commerce. Welcome, guys.
Good afternoon.
John and Nick are here again. And how many episodes have we done this? What is it? This is 91, right?
Yeah.
I completely missed the intro on the video call of this. I have no idea why.
It happens. It's on two separate pages in the document.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at both of them, but it's just amazing how I just can't get this right. But that's all right. We'll deal with it, right? John Picozzi from OOMF is with us again. Hey, John.
Howdy. It's looking more like spring out there today.
The weather update is coming from Mr. Picozzi.
Yeah, I figure the weekly weather update for our listeners is important. I could talk about work and I could talk about being busy and my class at Johnson Wales, but I prefer to talk about the weather.
Yeah,
Snow's melting.
It's like I'm talking to my parents, so that's okay. So thanks, Dad. We also have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design.
Good afternoon. Forget the weather. I'm more excited about the winter snow bans ending next week, so we can park everywhere.
Good.
But yeah, as you said, we're talking about international commerce this week. It's an interesting topic, and it's one of those things, kind of like translations, where you think there's a lot of solved problems and it'll be easy to set up, and there's a lot of gotchas, a lot of places you can turn wrong.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting topic, and I can't wait to hear what John and Nick have to insert here. And one of the things that's great about this show is that it's often guided by what we're working on, right? So we talk about 1 or 2 weeks ahead of time. We talk about show topics, and it's often driven by the projects that we're dealing with, the customers we're dealing with, and the stresses that we have in our current life. So if you were to look back at the last 100 episodes almost of this show, you could probably map out what the kind of projects are that we've been working on, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah, it definitely keeps it fresh.
Yeah, it keeps it fresh, and it keeps it interesting for us because we have interesting information we can provide at the moment because we're currently working on it. So maybe Talking Drupal should become Our Lives, right? Should we rename the show at some point?
I think we'd get a large fall off of listeners at that change.
I agree, John. All right, so let's get into today's show. International commerce. So what are we even talking about here?
So today's show, a while back we talked about commerce, Drupal commerce, and building an e-commerce site with Drupal. Today's show is specifically geared towards international commerce. So what do I mean by that? I mean selling things outside of the United States. A lot of companies, some companies do business just inside the U.S. Some companies do business globally, but some companies that are working globally have instances where you can buy stuff within the United States or the United States and Canada, but also they have other storefronts set up for their international or country-specific selling points.
John, would you say the perspective today is from a developer in the U.S. selling outside of the U.S.?
Can you restate the question? Not sure I understand that one.
Yeah, so when we call this international commerce, the perspective that we're bringing, right, is because we're developing code based as U.S. developers, but we're trying to sell products for customers that are outside the U.S. I think I said the same thing twice, so that probably didn't clarify it for you.
So the listeners can rewind and see if Steven said the same thing twice at this point.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is that we have listeners, lots of listeners that are outside the U.S.
Sure.
So are we talking about a topic that is them selling internationally,
right,
or is it just U.S. people selling internationally?
So it's a little bit of both, and here's how I can quantify that. What I mean by international commerce is, we all buy stuff, and I'm not going to. I was going to use Amazon as my example, but that's a bad example. Let's use a smaller company. Mom and pop widgets. Okay, Mom and Pop Widgets is a company based in the United States. They have a e-commerce website that's based in the United States, and they'll ship globally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that e-commerce website is geared towards predominantly U.S. people, but somebody from France could find it and buy something from it, and they would ship stuff out to them.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm specifically talking about here is a U.S. company or a company anywhere having an entity within a country and selling stuff within that country specifically. So the example that I'm going to actually be using today is for a project that I'm working on right now, is a site in India, which that site only ships to India.
So you're talking about your build. So that's why I wanted to ask this question. So we're framing this as you're a U.S. developer building a site for a company in India that is selling in India.
A company that's actually not based in the U.S., but a U.S. branch of a company that has an entity a dealer in India, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's important to clarify that there are a couple other ways that international commerce can happen. The first example that John mentioned, I would say, really is international commerce, because then you're dealing with international addresses, changing the shipping fees based on country. You're dealing with imports, all sorts of things. And I think the larger, the third tier of international commerce is companies that have multiple branches, multiple locations, and just like multilingual, the storefront changes and the prices change and the currency changes based on the country and the person viewing the website. So I think both of us have worked on many sites that are international, and that a customer is it from England or Asia or Europe or India, and they're only selling to their home country. There's also websites that have, like Amazon, you can purchase from multiple countries and multiple currencies.
I will say, Nick is spot on with that. I think the latter example of the country-specific storefront is probably an easier undertaking than the U.S. storefront that ships all over the country, or all over the world rather. And we'll explain why that is a little bit later on as we talk about the different buckets.
John and Nick, I have a question here. Are we talking about where people are viewing the website from, or where the product is being shipped to?
Shipped to.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Well, both. I mean, where they're viewing from can certainly affect the transaction as well.
I mean, you can't really control a view, right? I mean, you can do IP detection and switch the website out based on what country or location they're coming in from.
But we're not talking about translation. We're talking about commerce today.
Right, but I mean, you can still do that with commerce. If you had, the instance for having different storefronts in a lot of cases is that there are different product sets associated with those countries. So, example, Mom and Pop Widgets sells A, B, and C in the United States, but in India or the UK they sell X, Y, and Z. So having different storefronts there is, or switching them out based on location is a factor.
Does Drupal Commerce allow that capability to display different products based on where your geolocation is?
So you could use a combination of context and domain to be able to do something like that.
So it's more on the user side to pick which country or which location they're coming in from.
No, so
basically picking the storefront they want to see.
Yeah, so with domain and context, you would be able to say, based on whatever domain, show this stuff, assuming that your domain is country specific. If they're coming in, going back to our example of like a U.S. site that ships outside, if they're coming to the one website that services the whole globe, then they don't really have to worry about that, because the thinking there is that anything on that website could be shipped to you no matter what country you live in.
Right.
And I've actually worked with companies in both instances. In the past, I've worked with a company that would ship anywhere, and their setup was a lot more complicated than doing a site specifically for a country.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to distinguish right now the difference between the shipping of where something's going versus the products you have available to you based on where you're located.
And it's not just the product set; it's also the currencies.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So if you're doing a specific site, going back to that, if you're doing a specific site for a specific country, then the products that are displayed are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Shipping addresses can be limited to just within that country. If you're doing kind of the context and domain approach, where it's switching out products based on the domain that they're accessing it from, you can basically set your shipping address to whatever you want, and only the end point there, I think, is that the customer is only going to see products that they can actually purchase in their country.
So, I think.
But hang on, sorry, Nick, but is it products that they can ship to? So
they're only going to see.
I'm not trying to complicate this, but I'm sitting here thinking that I'm sitting in the U.S., but I want to ship something to India, right?
If the website, if the commerce provider has India as a shipping option, then you should be able to ship it to India.
Okay.
It's very much based on the company. Every company kind of does it a little bit differently. My point is that if you're accessing a store's company's website or company store on a certain domain that's country specific, you should only see products that you're going to be able to buy and ship to that country. If you go to the French,
you're basing the products you can see based on where you're located, but the shipping where they can ship is based on the functionality of the site. Makes perfect sense.
And an example of a site that would have different products per country would be something like, I don't know if you've seen the new Coke bottles. Well, I guess they're not that new anymore. But their campaign where they had people's names on each bottle.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Those names are country specific. So in America we'll have like Amanda and Josh and John and Steven. But in Russia we'll have Alexander and et cetera, et cetera. They have specific names based on which country they're in.
Right.
So somebody that's in India wouldn't be able to purchase an Amanda Coke bottle. Instead, it will be something.
They don't have Amandas in India.
They may have Amandas, but it's not. It's probably not on the top 10 names
right.
for their demographic. So.
All right. So maybe we should start with currency. Talking about currency.
Yeah, so we're gonna go through some of the areas that you need to think about when dealing with international commerce, and the biggest one, or the one that's like should be at the top of your mind, is currency and how currency is formatted, and that's really it's really interesting to see that currency can can change drastically from the U.S. dollar to the Indian rupee. So just that example alone, something in the U.S. that may be $200, right? So that's $200. That's 3 digits plus the dollar sign.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not including a decimal place and cents. But in India, that actually turns into say like 75,000, right? So nobody quote me on the conversion to that. I'm just kind of like.
Well, I'm going to ask you about that in a minute. The conversion.
So from a theming standpoint, that you have to look at your currency, because places where you may have had 3 digits before now are 5 or 6 digits.
Mm-hmm.
That could essentially be problematic for you.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's theming. On the module and backend side of things, there are modules that can help you with formatting of currency. One of them that I actually installed most recently is the Commerce Currency Settings. That module actually allows you to format your currency, how it's displayed. So you select a currency, and then within that currency, you can select whether you want the currency symbol in front of it, you want the currency abbreviation after it, decimal places, so on and so forth. So it's really helpful in formatting that for output to the screen.
Yeah, and there's a few other things related to formatting. A couple that are really commonly known, and a couple that really are a bit more, a bit less mainstream. One of the big ones is, in America we use commas for separators at thousands, millions, billions, etc. We use points for decimal points. Most of the rest of the world, including the UK, etc., use the opposite. They use commas for the decimals, and they use points for the thousand separators. Another thing that's complicated is that not as many people know. Most Spanish-speaking countries have a different breakdown of numbers, especially when it comes to currency. So in America, we go, tens, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions, etc. Spanish-speaking countries, including most South American countries and Spain, go tens, hundreds, thousands, millions, then billions, then trillions. So they have completely different breakouts for how they separate stuff. Our billion is their 1,000 million. And the third and final, probably the most confusing piece, is that many currencies use the same currency symbol. So the Colombian peso uses the dollar sign. So you can't necessarily, you have to.
But Nick, are these confusing things from a developer side, or is Drupal helping out with this?
They're confusing. So the Commerce module certainly helps with some of this stuff, but it's important to know the differences across the country so that you can check edge cases and make sure that the currency module does account for it. Because while I know this stuff because I've spoken to people from those countries and done my due diligence, how do I know that there's hundreds of currencies in the world, and the commerce developers are fantastic, and they know more about this stuff than I do, but how do I know that they've covered every case? So it's important that whatever country you're doing commerce in, or your customer is doing commerce in, you need to find out what differences there are, not just between American currency and their currency, but whatever currencies are interacting, just to make sure that there's no overlap.
Yeah, a great example of that is actually, again, using the Indian rupee. It displays to the screen default in Commerce, kind of out of the box, as a number with the acronym after it. So it would display as 75,000.00 INR. Well, our client actually wanted it to display as the rupee symbol, 75,000, no decimal place, INR. And that's where commerce currency settings really comes in, because it allows you to manipulate that sort of thing on output. Now, granted, you could do that in a view by doing a rewrite if you wanted to, but it's not going to be across the board.
All right, let's move on to taxing. Taxes.
My favorite part of commerce.
Oh man,
how about if we don't? How about if we encourage everyone to not pay taxes? I think that would work.
If you so that's I'm assuming that's a joke, but it's only kind of a half-hearted joke.
It's a half-hearted joke, right?
Because if you include taxes into your sales prices, you can kind of get around actually having to collect taxes.
I don't think we should be advising tax.
No, and that's going to be my
approaches here, John. I think you just advise someone to include taxes in their prices and then not pay taxes. Is that what you just said?
I never said not to pay taxes.
Okay.
You should always pay your taxes.
But I would also
like to
not
say,
line-iteming them, right?
I would also like to say that I am not a professional tax person, so you should definitely consult one of those.
Yeah, it gets
what I am suggesting is we've all seen the online items being sold with tax included. That's what I'm suggesting.
So it actually gets really complicated, and it gets complicated forgetting going from country to country, going from state to state. So
yeah, right.
There's no real clear-cut online tax policy. The closest comes to if a client has an office in the state, they need to collect taxes for that state and pay taxes for that state. So, for example, if there's an office in Vermont,
if they have a presence,
if they have a brick and mortar presence in that state, they have to collect and pay taxes on commerce in that state. So,
but you know what, Nick? I think we need to be a little bit careful here, because I'm not sure that's the case anymore either. I mean,
yeah, so it changes all, and that's my next point. It changes all the time. So, as developers, it is important to know that, but you need to make sure your clients are also doing their due diligence. And advising what kind of taxes are being collected and recorded.
As developers, I think you need to know how to apply tax. I don't know that it should be your responsibility at all to know the tax rate, or to know what type of tax or how, when and how that tax should be applied. That should be definitely on the business to talk to their accountant, talk to their tax people, and figure that out.
Yeah.
John, the important thing here is that the commerce allows you to apply a tax based on the shipping address.
Yes.
Yes. So commerce actually is great at calculating the taxes and implementing the taxes. And the things you really need to be aware of with taxes are that there are two different types of taxes that basically you turn on commerce tax module and you get two types of taxes, and then how those taxes are applied. So let's talk about the different types of taxes first. So VAT, or value-added tax, is something that's common in Europe and basically outside of the U.S. Mm-hmm. We don't have VAT inside the U.S. So that is a tax that is big in international commerce. You have to deal with that. Inside the U.S., we have sales tax, which is commonly applied to a subtotal. So let's talk about.
John, is sales tax dependent on state?
So yeah, you have state sales tax. There is no, to my knowledge, I don't believe there's a federal sales tax. So it's usually state specific, but it can also be county specific. So depending on what county you're doing business in, your county can assess an additional tax. So you definitely want to check what your state tax rate is, sales tax rate is, and then see if your county is doing anything there as well. So let's talk about how these are applied, because that was something that I actually struggled with for a while. Sales tax. Sales tax is applied to the subtotal of products, less any discounts or coupons you have. So an example of this would be you buy $200 worth of product. You have a $50 coupon, right? Mm-hmm. That brings your $200 purchase down to $150.
Right.
You're charged a percentage. So say, tax in Rhode Island is 7%. You're charged 7% sales tax on the $150 at checkout.
Yep.
I'm not 100% sure if your shipping is taxable. I don't believe that it is. But again, check with a tax professional on that. So that's how sales tax is calculated. Value added tax, or VAT, is actually calculated very differently. It is calculated onto the product line item. So I'm going through the shopping cart and I see a product for, I'm going to use US dollars even though we don't have that, but I see a product for $300. And $300, I put it in my cart. In my cart, at least in Drupal Commerce by default, when I go look at my cart, that product may be actually $325 or whatever the percentage is. What's happening is VAT is being added to the line item in the shopping cart automatically. So when you go through checkout, you will see a line item that says, value added tax, and it'll have a number in there. But that's not being added to the subtotal. It's being added to each product line item.
John, how does a line item know to apply the VAT? Is it based on where you're located, or is it based on the way you set up the...
So that's actually a great question. Mm. So when you set up your taxes, you have the option of setting up one tax for your whole site. So a flat tax, basically. Okay, everybody gets charged 7% sales tax or 7% VAT. And that will apply to every product. The question you're asking is, how would I do it if I were doing it per state or per region of a country?
Right, yeah. So I'm in the U.S. I'm U.S., but I'm selling to a country that has VAT taxes.
So that would actually be handled by the rules module. And you have the ability to use rules to say, okay, this person is coming in from, this country or this region. They are assessed, a different tax rate, a 5% tax rate, we'll say. Assess them that tax rate as opposed to the normal tax rate or whatever.
At the line item.
So yeah, and so there's a couple things to say about that too. I mean, number one, we a couple of states do have pseudo VAT taxes. I know Michigan had it for a while. Hawaii has something similar. I'm pretty sure gasoline is VAT taxed. But anyway, that brings up the point that we were talking about earlier. Typically, taxes like that depend on your location. So if you have a location in Vermont and you ship internationally and you sell something to Italy, typically you're not required to pay taxes in Italy because your income is still in Vermont. Now, if you had a location in Italy, then you'd be paying taxes on income generated in Italy, and you'd have to know this stuff. But and that's what I was mentioning earlier about the state. So if you don't have a location in Massachusetts, you don't generally have to collect Massachusetts state sales tax, but you still have to pay taxes on the sales that you make in whatever state you're in. There's some question about how they track that and get a hold of that, but it's at the moment it's up in the air. But it's better just to collect sales tax at least on the states that you're in. And
just charge everybody 25% tax.
Why am I feeling like we need to be putting big disclaimers?
We are not tax professionals. We don't recommend that you do this.
Yeah, definitely consult your tax professional and your lawyer, because they're gonna be the ones that are gonna know how you need to implement tax and how you need to collect it.
I think what's interesting though is I think these are things that we deal with when we're trying to service customers in these different locations, and trying to build e-commerce systems that go state to state, even within the U.S. And now we're talking about international today. These are things that, as developers, we're trying to figure out.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of the stickier pieces of international commerce.
It is a mind bender, and I will actually give you a public service announcement here because I've been dealing with some tax.
Yep.
Be careful when you're implementing tax with discount or coupon or the sale price module. Be careful at making sure that tax is being implemented properly. So another point with tax is that it's calculated in the pricing rules for your products, obviously. And depending on where in the line that rule is being fired can depend on whether it incorporates the sales price or it does not incorporate the discount. So just be aware, when you're testing your store, be sure to do a test order and make sure that you use a calculator to figure out if tax is being calculated properly, because I did see an instance where using the sales price or the sale price module, tax was basically being calculated on the unit price as opposed to the sale price, and charging people more for tax. So that's something to definitely be aware of.
Let's move on to shipping.
Oh man, it's like it just gets worse. It's like you deal with tax, and then you're like, oh, I'm done with tax. I've figured it out. I feel so great. And then it's like, oh, by the way, we need to
actually get them their items.
So shipping is interesting because you can use a couple of different options here. UPS and FedEx both have modules for Drupal. The last time I used the UPS module, it took a lot of wrangling to be able to get it to calculate a shipping price correctly. So be aware of that. They're using metrics like dimensions, box dimensions, weight, and location to figure out how much it's going to cost. And if you have products that may not ship in a box or may not have, the proper dimensions, or awkward dimensions, that can be something to have to think about, especially if you're doing large things that require freight. So,
John, as this show is about international commerce, do you see anything different with international?
Yeah. So,
as opposed to domestic, yeah.
Yeah. So you're using your major carriers, UPS, FedEx,
USPS.
The United States Postal Service, right? All of those carriers are obviously international carriers. So working with them is definitely a good way to go, and they'll be able to get your packages there. And most of them have, actually all of them, I believe, have modules that integrate to commerce that'll allow you to calculate shipping. Where you get into, or where you can get into a sticky situation and where you may have to develop your own custom module is using local carriers. So an example of that would be if you're shipping within a certain country and you want to use a local carrier because they're going to give you a better rate or whatever the reason is. They may not have a Drupal module, which is probably the case. You may have to develop one, or a scenario that I like to use, a quick fix I like to use in that scenario is going to a flat rate shipping model. And flat rate shipping model is basically kind of works the same way as using a carrier, common carrier. But it allows you to basically set a flat rate based on the product or the weight or whatever you like, for shipping. And that also uses the rules module to be able to figure out what shipping rate should apply.
Hey, John, we ship internationally probably 10 times a year, maybe. And it's mostly documents, like contracts and stuff like that. And we always use DHL for that. And do you know if DHL has a module in Drupal?
I do not know, but I'm sure Nick's doing a search right now to get you an answer to that question.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they do. I have to say, yeah, they do.
All right.
I will be honest.
Shipping international is expensive.
I've used UPS in the past.
No, it's not. No, it's not, Nick.
It depends on where you're shipping to. I mean,
yeah, it depends on where you're shipping to and the size of the product.
Yeah,
and
South America.
Company you use. So, but if you're gonna try to ship international with a carrier that's generally domestic, it's gonna be expensive. But if you use a international shipper, it's not that expensive. It's just why I'm saying that. So, like, if you use DHL, so this is my experience, right? If I use DHL to ship a product or a package to Singapore, I'll pay $25 to do that. If I try to do it through a domestic carrier, who's like maybe a UPS, who their main business is not shipping to Singapore, I might pay 3 times that.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used UPS and it cost $90 to ship 3 pages.
Yeah.
I will say shipping, it's interesting when you start working with shipping to see how much it costs depending on where it's going from and the size of the package and the weight of the package and all those metrics. Because UPS actually uses those metrics to fill their trucks and planes and delivery apparatus. So it's very interesting to see, like, hey, we can get like 25 boxes that are this size into this truck, and it'll go this far, and it's probably why they're one of the better logistics companies out there, because they know what they're doing. So
let's move on to payments if we could.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So payments are I think one of the easier things to deal with. There are a lot of options for payments. You can use common processors like Authorize.net.
But what about internet? So this is the international commerce. So that's the focus here. So can you use? Let's focus on those payment processors, right?
So Authorize.net and PayPal, I believe, are global payment processors, which means they'll take a payment from anywhere. I know Stripe just launched in 10 countries, I think. They were originally US, Canada, and UK. I think they added some other countries to their list. Another option that actually, as far as payment goes, that I was not really aware of, which is big in India apparently, is cash on delivery.
Really?
Yeah. So
COD, huh?
Yep. The old COD. So basically, what that means, if you can't extrapolate from cash on delivery, is that you order something from a website, they deliver it to you, and when the delivery person arrives at your door, you give them cash or a check, I guess, and they give you the box.
What happens if they don't give you cash?
You don't give them the box.
Returned.
Yeah, but you've already incurred all the costs to get that product delivered there, right?
It is.
Haven't you?
I guess. I don't really know. I mean, I guess it's a cost of doing business sort of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I don't know how that works with the shipper either. I don't know if if they don't charge you, if the person doesn't pay. I don't really know how that works.
That doesn't seem like it would be the best customer to work with.
I mean, it happens a lot in restaurant businesses, but that's usually when they're going out of business. I mean, a restaurant still needs food to be able to serve their customers.
No, but those are arrangements. We're talking about electronic commerce here.
Yeah, it's a lot
Right.
different.
Yeah, that's not the restaurant business. I mean, these are relationships outside of someone buying something online. So, John, you're saying that a payment type in India is COD for an online purchase?
That is what I'm saying.
Wow.
We have enabled, and there's a cash on delivery module for Drupal. So
Wow.
we actually have enabled that and are using that for a payment option.
Wow, it's shocking to me.
You know what? It was kind of weird for me too, but
okay, it's a cultural thing, maybe.
It's a cultural thing, as far as I understand it.
They may not have debit cards or credit cards.
Well, subsequently, we're also using a credit card processor based in India. So they do have credit cards because this processor is, some credit cards.
So just so I'm clear, the site you're building, there's a purchase option that says to someone, I can buy it, and it's going to be shipped to me, and someone's going to knock on my door, and I'm going to give them cash.
Correct.
It could be a check to deliver that product.
Correct.
That's impressive. Yeah. Wow.
So another thing to talk about.
Can people pay with bartering? Is there a bartering module? I'll give you 6 chickens.
Oh boy, I can smell the complaint letters now.
No, I'm just asking. I mean, all right.
I'll stay away from that. So,
right.
I mean, another thing to consider too is conversions. I know for myself, being out of the country, using a credit card directly, I would get charged a foreign transaction fee, but it was a lot better than doing the actual currency exchange. I do know online, for example, if you're using PayPal and you're paying for something in pounds using dollars, they charge you an additional fee. I know that sometimes you can pass that forward. Sometimes the person paying has to pay the fee, but that's also something to consider, especially if you're a company that's just shipping internationally, not necessarily offering stuff in native currencies. You're going to probably be hit with foreign transaction fees, and you have to figure out the best way to handle that and the cheapest way to handle that.
So are you talking about like, when a customer uses their credit card, they may get hit with a transaction fee for the conversion? Or are you referring to on the business end, a business being hit with some sort of transaction fee because they're processing international business?
I think it happens on both ends.
Yeah, right.
Really? That's another reason to love the credit card industry, I guess. They're double dipping. It seems.
I mean, that is the entire credit card industry. I mean, they double dip. I mean, you pay interest on the credit, and the person accepting it pays a fee.
Right.
I mean, that's how they make their money. They don't make nearly as much money on the interest payments as they do on the percentage.
And that being said, I'm sure that can be alleviated by using a local payment processor. So, if you're,
John, what do you mean by a local payment processor?
So we're actually using basically an Indian-based payment processor for our website.
So it's a Drupal module that's you're connecting to.
They have a Drupal module, and it's a payment processor that's based in the country of. To my knowledge, they're based in the country of.
You don't necessarily need that. I mean, because American Express will accept rupees. In order to not be hit by the foreign transaction fees, you just need to also accept payment in rupees.
No, but it sounds like to me that John is saying that he's working with it's a Stripe version. It's a Stripe company, but they're based in India, so they have their own module. It's not about an American Express.
Yeah, but you're telling me that they'll take those rupees and convert them to dollars for free? I mean, that's.
Well, I would imagine that's part of doing business with them. You're using their processor. They're taking a percentage of your transactions. That percentage of transactions must be going towards paying for conversion of that currency.
Yeah, so it's either you see it separated or it's just added on top of the fee. I mean, because at the end of the day,
it could be included. I mean, if they're taking a flat 3%, you know, whether it's included in that fee or not.
I mean, to give you an idea, as a consumer, using my credit card to pay pesos directly saved me about 10%, 10 to 12%.
Usually when you're traveling abroad, you get the benefit of the credit card company finding you the lowest interest rate for a certain period of time as you're traveling. I've never seen them actually charge an additional fee for that, but maybe I haven't been traveling internationally in a while, so.
Yeah, to give you an example, American Express would charge me a 2 or 3% fee every time I use the card outside the country, but they were then converting the currency at 100% value, whereas if I changed cash, I was getting charged a 15 to 20% conversion rate. So I mean, I was still getting hit 3%, but it was saving me a ton of money versus changing cash. And it wasn't like just some random place. I mean, I changed money at a couple different places. So that kind of brings us to the next topic, though, which is getting paid for your work. So if your customer is outside of the U.S., it's sometimes not as easy to get paid as it is if the company is in the U.S., depending on whether you accept credit cards or not. So for me, and I'll let you guys talk about how you do it. But for me, I found the best way is just a direct transfer, which involves a couple of extra things. I mean, you can transfer money in the U.S. just using an account number and a routing number. But if you're going to be doing it internationally, you also generally need a SWIFT key and sometimes another transfer code for the particular branch you're transferring it to. And then again, there's an international conversion fee that either you or your client has to pay. So it's typically something that you negotiate with the client who's paying the conversion fee, and depending on the business. Some businesses pay for that, some businesses don't like to. How about you guys?
I'd rather not comment on this, to be honest with you. I've found that the customers I have the most trouble getting paid with are outside the U.S. And it's not of any technical reason. I think it's a geographic reason.
Can you explain what you mean by geographic?
No, I actually don't want to comment on it, to be honest with you.
So
sorry.
Yeah,
all right.
So, no,
Let's just leave it at that.
Let's leave it there. But it's just something. It's not necessarily a word of caution. It's just another thing to think about when you have international customers, because it's in America. I can very easily, but not very easily, and I'd almost never do this, but if a client defaults, you have small claims, you have a lawyer, you can send demand letters. But if your client resides outside the U.S., then legal recourse is either generally far more expensive or less effective. So I mean, it's definitely worth exploring and making sure that the reward certainly outweighs the risk of the relationship. And that being said, I have international clients that I'm perfectly happy with and are much more pleasant to work with than some of my American customers. But it's definitely something to consider.
Silence. Yeah, I know. I'm not usually very silent. So, we've had struggles in the past year with getting paid internationally. So, that could be totally our accounts receivable process. So I actually don't even want to. I think if you establish the right partnership with your customer and establish the right pay mechanism, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I recommend.
Um,
I don't really have much to
maybe,
do with.
yeah.
I don't have much to do with how we get paid. But I always recommend gold. Gold is good.
Who added this topic? Get paid for your work. Who added this to the
Who do you
agenda?
who do you
So
think?
shame on you.
I don't know who it
All
was.
right, okay, all right. So none of us did it. All right,
Magic.
so let's just leave it at that. Because we try to be honest on this show. I mean, I just don't have a comment right now. So
I did want to comment on something else that just
yeah.
came through. Since we're talking about commerce, Commerce Guys is a company started by the group of guys that build and maintain the Commerce and suite of modules.
Hmm.
And it seems that they just joined. I'm just reading right now. Harafe and Commerce Guys joined forces. So it looks like I don't know if they're forming a partnership to provide better statistics in business intelligence to Drupal Commerce. So if you're using, so hopefully we'll be able to get a better idea how people use commerce and use the website to purchase items in the future,
I will
which
say
is always
to
helpful.
that point, to piggyback on that point, there is also a Drupal Commerce Google Analytics module that you can enable that will actually allow Google Analytics to track your commerce products and purchases and give that data to Google Analytics, so you can be able to use that in there as well. Really helpful to turn on if you're looking for that.
Hey, John, do you have any special resources that you found that would be helpful with doing some international commerce?
Uh,
And if you don't know them now, if you could just put them in the show notes later, so we can add them to the.
No, I definitely know them right
Okay.
off the top of my head. The Drupal Commerce website has actually been really helpful.
Okay.
It's drupalcommerce.org, I believe.
You could still add it to the show notes, by the way.
Uh,
All right. Cool.
Real helpful in finding modules and also going through their library of documentation. Has videos and stuff in it that can help you set that stuff up. So that has been really helpful.
Okay. Good. All right. Why don't we move on to our module of the week?
Yeah, so our module of the week this week is a module that I actually used a couple of weeks ago, called the Drupal Most Popular module. And what this module actually allows you to do is it gives you basically keeps track of how many views your content has and will give you the ability to create a view of the most popular content on your website. So where is this, where is this useful? My implementation was actually for a blog. Client wanted the most popular blog posts in the right hand, in the sidebar of his blog.
John,
And
what does most popular mean?
so most popular is actually it's calculated based on views. So how many people have viewed that page?
So the module's adding in some statistics by click.
Yep, exactly. I don't know if it's by click or by load, but it's basically keeping a count of how many times that page is viewed.
Okay.
And it also has the ability to work off of how many comments a certain page has. So if a page has a lot of comments, you could actually use that as an indicator as well.
Right.
Has some other tie-ins to Google Analytics and add this as well. But the base functionality is really page views, or at least that's how I'm using it. And it allows you to just be able to get a list of like, oh, hey, these are the most popular pages on my website, or serve up the top 5 blog posts in my instance. Oh, these are the top 5 blog posts, or this is what's trending on the blog right now.
John, are you familiar with the statistics module?
So
Is
this
that?
module actually uses the statistics module.
Okay.
So this module is actually piggybacking onto the statistics module
Gotcha.
to give you the views integration and the themable aspects of it and whatnot.
Okay. So the statistics module will allow you to sort of track all the clicks on all content pieces of your site, which seems to be a real sort of big overhead piece. I haven't seen it be a big issue though.
Yeah.
We have it activated on a number of sites, and it provides a lot of good statistics.
Yeah, I have heard and seen that well, I haven't seen it, but I've heard that the statistics module it can be a resource hog.
Yeah, you gotta be careful
for larger volume sites, but we're using it.
Could be the case using your module as well here, right?
Well, right, because it requires statistics or certain parts of statistics, so you would need both of these. So yeah, you know, if you're concerned about resource hogs, you may want to test that out before pushing it out into production.
All right, great. Nick, any comments?
Nope, perhaps look at that module. I haven't seen it before.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, here we are. This was really an interesting show. Sort of dabbling into some areas that we're exploring ourselves real time, right? So John's been working on this for the last few weeks, and we sort of bring it to the show as we're learning about it. So if anyone has any comments or feedback on what we've shared with you today, please email us at talkingdrupal@gmail.com. We don't get a lot of emails there, so feel free to email us. All right. So, hey, guys, do you have anything you want to talk about in terms of promotion or things going on?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Drupal PVD. If you're in the Providence area, next month on the 14th, I believe it is, just double checking, yes it is. Come by the Inc. offices, and we'll be having our local Providence Drupal meetup. We'll be starting off with a little networking, doing some lightning talks, and yeah, we'll have a really good time.
Yeah, I paid a visit to the new Oomph offices yesterday. It's a really nice space.
To clarify, we are not charging admissions. He meant he just stopped by.
I did. I just stopped by, yeah. And for those people who are in Providence and have attended the previous PVD things, you do not need to knock on the door or send a text message to get into the location. And there is an elevator that actually works, so you don't have to climb 4 floors of stairs to get up to the meetup. So it's a great improvement, and we really thank Oomph for supporting Drupal PVD. It's great. It's for free, right, John? Did you say we're not paying for this, are we?
Yeah, it is absolutely. The event is absolutely free.
Okay, just checking.
April 14th starts at 6 p.m. Be there
awesome.
or be square.
Great. All right, John Picozzi from Oomph. Where can people find you online if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, if you want to comment on anything you heard today or just want to reach out, you can find me on all the social networks at John Picozzi and at oomphinc.com all the time.
Great. How about you, Nick?
You can find me online at NixVan, NICXVAN, pretty much everywhere. And send me a message on Twitter if you have any questions about international commerce, although I think John's a better resource. He's got a little bit more recent experience here.
Nick, do you have any upcoming events you want to promote?
I'll be at the Boston Drupal meetup in 2 weeks, and I'll be checking out the new Oomph offices the week after that.
All right. Okay. Good. All right. Excellent. Yeah. So I would agree. If you have international commerce issues, please reach out to John. If you don't, you could reach out to @Stephen Cross on Twitter.
If you have other issues, you can reach out to Stephen Cross.
Exactly. Hey guys, thanks for getting together again this week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good one.
All right, see ya.
See you next week.